All right, you sick fucks. Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going to rip the goddamn mask off. One of the most secretive organizations on the planet. China's Ministry of State Security. The motherfucking MSS. If you think the CIA is shady, wait till you hear about these bastards.
They make the CIA look like a bunch of Boy Scouts.
Let's cut the crap. We've got a stack of intel here, and it's some seriously fucked up shit. We're talking espionage, assassinations, disinformation campaigns, the whole 9 yards. But before we get into their modern-day bullshit, we got to understand where these assholes came from.
Yeah, they didn't just pop out of nowhere. The MSS has a long and bloody history going back to the early days of the Chinese Communist Party.
Back then, they were known as the TK, basically a communist hit squad. These guys were straight-up gangsters using torture and assassination to eliminate their enemies. That's pretty hardcore, right?
It was a brutal time. China was in the middle of a civil war, and the tech played a key role in consolidating the CCP's power. One of their most notorious operatives was Kang Sheng, a guy so paranoid he thought everyone was a spy. He purged the tech multiple times, executing anyone he suspected of disloyalty.
So basically, these guys were ruthless as fuck even to their own people. But here's the kicker. They almost got wiped out in the 1930s because of a double agent named Gu Shunzhang. This dude was a magician using his stage shows as cover for his espionage. Pretty slick, right?
He was a talented operative, no doubt. Unfortunately for the CCP, he got captured by the KMT, the Nationalist Party, and decided to switch sides. He spilled the beans on a ton of tech operatives, nearly crippling the entire organization.
Damn, that's some serious backstabbing shit. So how the hell did the CCP survive that? They must have been shitting themselves.
They got lucky. Zhu Enlai, one of the CCP's top leaders, had a mole inside the KMT's intelligence agency. This mole tipped him off about Gu's betrayal, giving the tech just enough time to relocate their agents and avoid total annihilation.
So they dodged a bullet, thanks to some good old-fashioned espionage. But even after that close call, they still had to deal with Kang Sheng and his paranoia. Imagine working for a guy who thinks everyone around him is a traitor. Must have been a fucking nightmare.
It created a climate of fear and suspicion within the tech, which ultimately hindered their effectiveness. Kang Sheng's purges decimated their ranks and destroyed morale.
Yeah, not exactly the kind of work environment that fosters creativity and teamwork. But despite all this internal bullshit, the tech managed to survive and eventually evolve into the MSS we know today. But their history is full of fuck-ups, and one of the biggest was their failure to predict the Vietnamese invasion of Cambodia.
This was a colossal intelligence failure, no doubt about it. China was a close ally of the Khmer Rouge, the brutal regime that ruled Cambodia at the time. You'd think they would have seen the invasion coming, but they were caught completely flat-footed.
I mean, it's not like Vietnam just decided to invade on a whim. There must have been some warning signs, some intel that the MSS... What the fuck were these guys doing?
There are a few theories. Some experts believe that the MSS was blinded by their ideological commitment to the Khmer Rouge. They simply couldn't believe that their communist allies would betray them like that.
So they were basically living in a fantasy land, ignoring all the red flags. Typical commie bullshit.
Another theory is that the MSS was still struggling to recover from the Cultural Revolution, a period of intense political turmoil in China. Their resources were stretched thin, and they might have been too focused on internal security to adequately monitor the situation in Cambodia.
So basically, they were too busy purging their own people to notice that their neighbors were about to invade their allies. Sounds about right.
Whatever the reason, the consequences were severe. China ended up backing a genocidal regime for another decade, further damaging their international reputation.
And it probably pissed them off something fierce. I mean, imagine getting played like that by your supposed allies. Talk about humiliation.
The invasion was a wake-up call for the MSS. It forced them to reevaluate their priorities and modernize their intelligence-gathering capabilities.
Yeah, they realized they couldn't afford to fuck up like that again. And that brings us to their modern-day activities, which are even more fucked up than their early days.
They've learned from their past mistakes and become a much more sophisticated and dangerous organization.
We're talking espionage, disinformation, cyber attacks, and even transnational repression. These guys are playing for keeps, and they're not afraid to break the rules.
Their goal is to advance China's interests by any means necessary, and they've shown a willingness to use increasingly aggressive tactics to achieve their objectives.
So buckle up, folks, because we're about to dive headfirst into the murky world of the MSS. And trust me, it's going to get dark. All right, you bastards. Let's pick up where we left off. Last time we were talking about how the MSS got their asses handed to them when Vietnam decided to kick the shit out of Cambodia. They learned their lesson the hard way, and now they're playing a whole new game.
It's a game with much higher stakes. We're talking global espionage, cyber warfare, and a ruthless campaign to silence anyone who dares to question the Chinese Communist Party.
Let's start with their espionage operations.
Mm-hmm.
These fuckers are everywhere, man. They're infiltrating governments, corporations, even universities.
Yeah.
They're like cockroaches, man. You can try to stamp them out, but they just keep coming back.
One of their favorite tactics is to use front companies. These are seemingly legitimate businesses that are actually controlled by the MSS. They use these companies to gather intelligence, steal technology, and launder money.
So they're basically wolves in sheep's clothing. They're setting up shop in our own backyard and using our own systems against us. How the fuck are we supposed to know who to trust?
It's a challenge for intelligence agencies around the world. These front companies are often very sophisticated and well disguised. They might have legitimate employees, real products, even impressive financial records.
So they're basically playing us for fools. And the worst part is we're funding their operations with our own money. Every time we buy a product from one of these shady companies, we're putting cash in the pockets of the MSS. Talk about a kick in the balls.
It's a disturbing reality, and it's not just limited to traditional espionage. The MSS is also heavily involved in cyber warfare.
Yeah, these bastards are notorious hackers. They're constantly probing our networks, looking for vulnerabilities to exploit. They're after our military secrets, our financial data, even our personal information.
They've been linked to some of the most sophisticated cyber attacks in recent history, including the massive hack of the Office of Personnel Management in 2015.
That was a real shit show. Millions of government employees had their personal information stolen, including social security numbers and security clearance details.
Okay.
It's a major embarrassment for the U.S. government and a huge victory for the MSS.
The MSS is constantly evolving its cyber capabilities. They're investing heavily in artificial intelligence, machine learning, and quantum computing, all with the goal of developing even more powerful hacking tools.
So basically, they're building a digital arsenal that could cripple our entire infrastructure. That's some scary shit, man.
It's a real threat, and one that we need to take seriously. We can't afford to underestimate their capabilities or their willingness to use them.
But it's not just about stealing secrets or launching cyber attacks. The MSS is also engaged in a massive disinformation campaign, trying to manipulate public opinion and undermine our democracy.
We're using social media troll farms and state-controlled media to spread propaganda and sow discord among Western societies.
They're trying to turn us against each other, to erode our trust in our institutions, and to weaken our resolve. It's a classic divide-and-conquer strategy, and it's working better than they ever imagined.
Social media has given them a powerful platform to reach millions of people around the world. They can tailor their message to specific audiences, making it seem more credible and persuasive.
It's like they're injecting poison into our information ecosystem, slowly but surely eroding our ability to think critically and discern truth from falsehood. It's a slow-motion mindfuck, and we're all falling for it.
It's a serious challenge and one that requires a multifaceted response. We need to educate the public about disinformation tactics, hold social media companies accountable for the content they host, and develop counter-narratives that expose the MSS's lies.
But it's not just about defending ourselves. We also need to go on the offensive. We need to expose their operations, disrupt their networks, and make it clear that there will be consequences for their actions.
It's a delicate balance. We need to be assertive without escalating the situation into a full-blown conflict.
Yeah, we don't want to start World War III over this. But we can't just sit back and let them walk all over us either. We need to find a way to push back without triggering a global meltdown.
It's a challenge that will require creativity, diplomacy, and a willingness to take calculated risks.
All right, so we've covered their espionage, their cyber warfare, their disinformation campaigns. But there's one more piece of the puzzle that we need to discuss, their transnational repression.
This is one of the most disturbing aspects of the MSS's operations. They're extending their reach beyond China's borders, targeting dissidents, journalists, and anyone who dares to criticize the CCP.
They're basically exporting their authoritarian bullshit to the rest of the world. They're using intimidation, harassment, and even violence to silence their critics no matter where they are.
They're going after people in our own countries, man. They're threatening their families back in China. They're spreading lies about them online. They're even trying to kidnap them and bring them back to face trial.
It's a bloody violation of international law and a direct attack on our sovereignty. But the worst part is they're getting away with it because our governments are too afraid to confront them.
There's a reluctance to escalate the situation, to risk damaging economic ties with China. But this appeasement is only emboldening the MSS, giving them a green light to continue their campaign of terror. It's time to draw a line in the sand. We need to stand up for our values and defend our way of life. Because if we don't, they'll just keep pushing until they've taken everything from us.
Welcome back, you degenerates. It's time to finish our deep dive into the scummy underbelly of the MSS, the Chinese Communist Party's attack dogs. Last time we were talking about their transnational repression tactics. We were straight out of a fucking horror movie.
It's chilling how they're extending their reach beyond China, targeting anyone who dares to speak out against them, even in democratic countries.
Yeah, it's like they think they can export their brand of tyranny to the rest of the world. They're using intimidation, harassment, and even fucking kidnapping to silence their critics. It's a goddamn disgrace.
One of the most disturbing examples is their treatment of Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang province. They've set up a vast network of concentration camps where they're detaining over 1 million people without trial.
Hold the fuck up. Concentration camps in the 21st century? Are you shitting me?
It's true. They're subjecting these people to forced labor torture and even forced sterilization. It's a systematic campaign of ethnic cleansing, plain and simple.
Jesus Christ, man. That's some seriously fucked up shit. What the hell is wrong with these people?
It's all about control. The CCP sees the Uyghurs as a threat to their authority, so they're trying to crush them to erase their culture, their religion, their very identity.
It's the same thing they're doing in Tibet. They're destroying their monasteries, forcing them to denounce their spiritual leader, the Dalai Lama, and flooding the region with Han Chinese settlers. It's a slow-motion genocide.
The MSS is playing a key role in all of this. They're the ones who are running the camps, monitoring the population, and silencing any dissent. They're the architects of this suppression.
They're the fucking Gestapo, man. The SS of the CCP. It's unbelievable that this is happening in the modern world. And the worst part is the rest of the world is just standing by and watching.
There's been some condemnation from Western governments, but it's mostly been words. There's been very little action taken to hold the CCP accountable for their crimes.
Because everyone's afraid of pissing off China. They're too worried about losing access to their cheap labor and their massive market. So they're willing to turn a blind eye to genocide.
It's a shameful chapter in human history, and it's only going to get worse if we don't stand up to these bullies.
So what the fuck can we do? How do we stop these assholes from getting away with murder?
We need to start by calling them out for what they are, a brutal authoritarian regime that is committing atrocities against its own people. We need to shine a light on their crimes, expose their lies, and shame them on the world stage.
We need to hit them where it hurts their wallets. We need to impose sanctions, boycott their products, and divest from their companies. We need to make it clear that doing business with China comes at a moral cost.
We also need to support the victims of their oppression. We need to provide safe haven to those fleeing persecution, help them rebuild their lives, and amplify their voices.
We need to show the world that there's a better alternative to the CCP's brand of tyranny. We need to defend our own values of freedom, democracy, and human rights.
It's a battle that won't be won overnight. It's going to require patience, persistence, and a willingness to make sacrifices.
But it's a fight worth fighting, because the stakes are too high. If we let the CCP get away with this, they'll just keep pushing the boundaries until they've conquered the entire fucking world.
They'll never stop until everyone is living under their thumb. So we need to wake the fuck up and realize the threat we're facing.
Yep.
We need to unite and fight back before it's too late.
That's right. We need to show those bastards that we're not going to back down. We're not going to let them bully us into submission. We're going to fight for our freedom, for our values, for our way of life, and we're going to win.
We have to believe that, because the alternative is unthinkable.
So there you have it, folks. The inside story of the MSS, the Chinese Communist Party's secret police. They're ruthless, they're cunning, and they're coming for us all.
Stay vigilant, stay informed, and stay strong. The fight for freedom is never truly over.
And that's a wrap for this episode of The Deep Dives. If you're not already pissed off, you haven't been paying attention, go do some research, spread the word, and let's make sure these fuckers don't get away with their bullshit.